Welcome to the In Cayman podcast. Here with Althea West Myers. Hi, Althea.
Hi, Badir. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on the podcast. You know, you were one of the first people I thought about when I started coming up with this podcast.
I'm still wondering why when you told me that.
Well, you know why? Because before I started the podcast, I started planning for it. And I started, thinking about a lot of the things that you've taught me about planning and executing the plan. So I definitely took more time planning this venture out than I have my other ventures in the past. So that was kind of exciting, actually, because I just felt a little bit more in control and on top of things. And it's been a fun experience doing that. So that's why I was like, maybe that's why you came to my mind. I was thinking about you as I was planning to do the podcast. So we met in 2020.
Right.
At the end of 2020, after the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I've known you a lifetime because we've spent a lot of time together. You've taught us a lot. But I don't know anything about you before 2020.
As I like to say, my life has not been all that exciting. I grew up with a big family. I have a big family. And my father was an entrepreneur. He was a haulage contractor. But in those days, we didn't think of it as entrepreneurship. He was as a contracted to a consumer goods haulage company. He had a few trucks, and he used to, get goods, deliver goods to various shops, supermarkets across the country. So he was my first hero.
Huh.
So, I looked up to him as like, the biblical Nebuchadnezzar, this gentleman who was huge. And I think a lot of it had to do with entrepreneurship, his skills at that. But I didn't know at the time. Mm-hmm. I grew up wanting to be a lawyer or a journalist. I knew I had, I liked to write. Mm-hmm. I like to express my opinion one way or another. Mm-hmm. So it's either going to be through talking, a lawyer, mm-hmm. or through writing. I really wanted to express myself in those ways. But they said life happens, and it never worked that way. And I think a little bit of me died inside every day because those dreams never came into being. And then I found entrepreneurship quite by accident, I think. I had a corporate job and grew tired of it, resigned and took up another job. I actually thought it was actually business development, just like I do now here. Mm-hmm. But I thought it was organizational development, which I was just learning about and really I was interested in. I applied for a supervisor position, was given a management position. And so I knew I had to learn quickly. Mm-hmm. I never had the luxury of, going along slowly. And as I learned, I was really enthralled, in this whole business of business development and entrepreneurship. And I recognized that even though our people have a natural penchant towards independence and, doing their thing and being I wouldn't say entrepreneurial, but being hustlers then. Mm-hmm. Our people like to do that. Mm-hmm. It just wasn't being done in ways that would really help them to realize the dreams that they had or, to realize their full potential.
And this was in Jamaica?
This was in Jamaica, yes. I was in Jamaica at the time, and I recognized that we are really, people of, enterprise. We do what we want to do. We do it well. We like being independent, but we really don't know how to run businesses well. Because I was looking at models. I was looking at the Amazons. I was looking at the big companies, the ones who did it well. Mm-hmm. I was trying to find the blueprint, and I was trying to find the pathways that they took. I mean, most of us as our small entrepreneurs don't dream of becoming Amazons or Facebooks, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. But I still wanted to find the pathway. What is it that they did that we can do? I'm looking for models. I'm looking for blueprints that I can now use to teach entrepreneurs. And once I got into business development, I like to say it brought me back to life. Entrepreneurship, I think, saved me from a sense of, despondency and depression. I lost my way along the way, and it really brought me back. So my whole passion, my whole life is wrapped up around, as I like to say, improving the practice of entrepreneurship, not just being there. But yes, I'm an entrepreneur in my own right. But most importantly, I want to teach people how to do it properly and how to do it well. And that's been my life for the last 17 years.
17 years.
17 years.
Wow. So when you took that, it was a post that you took? It was at 17?
It was a post I took. As I said, I thought it was one thing, and it ended up being, I thought it was organizational development. I was just into HR, learning about, how to create organizational structure and all of that. And I thought that this post was about that. When I got in, strangely for whatever reason, I went in for applying for a supervisory role, and somehow I got a management role and recognized, hey, you got to learn this thing because you know nothing about this thing. Right? So once I started learning, my whole life changed.
Wow. So you know what's funny? I could definitely see you as a lawyer, and I could definitely see you as a journalist. Actually,
I still write. I have a passion for writing. I like to express myself. I do better at expressing myself in writing than I do, orally. I have a lot of. Sometimes I get nervous orally, so I prefer. And sometimes I have usually very different opinions from the average person. That has always been my how I have been.
Right.
So I prefer to put my opinions in writing because people get offended when you say, and I don't know how not to say how I feel. So how to say it differently than how I'm feeling it in the moment. And I tend to be quite passionate.
Right.
So I will always say what people don't want to hear said. So I prefer to put my opinions in writing, and I still do that. I have a little blog, and I do a lot of journaling. So yes, I still write.
Yeah, you make it a little more palatable, I guess, when you have the time to think and write it. So what's your blog? Where is that? I didn't know you had a blog.
I have a blog. My friends like to say it's a private journal. Because, as usual, I haven't made it public. It's public. It's on the Google blog site, Blogger.
Okay.
It's called By Deliberate Design.
Okay.
And I do it because just the name alone tells you I believe everything should be intentional. It should be nothing happens by happenstance. We have to be active in our destiny. Destinies don't just happen. We have to actively create them. So it's called By Deliberate Design, meaning we have to live intentionally. So it really just, every day I used to write, or not every day, but as often as I got to write, I used to put things there that indicated to people, especially entrepreneurs, that you have to be intentional about creating change. And I'm passionate about change. I'm not one who is afraid of change, but for me, change must make sense. It must be, as that my favorite question in the world is, to what end? What are we trying to achieve? And if that's a question I ask myself every single day.
Is that right?
To what end? It's relevant to entrepreneurship. It's relevant to life. Why are we doing what we're doing? If we don't know why we're doing, then why are we doing it? It's the most important question in life, I think.
By deliberate design, I think that kind of really sums up what you've taught me, and it's just sort of understanding that you have to be deliberate and you have to execute with a very specific end in mind.
Absolutely.
And when you know the end, then what are the things that you need to execute to get there?
That with the end in mind.
And then not only that, but then when you start executing, then you start tracking your progress.
Absolutely.
And analyzing all of the data and reorienting or keep going. And it's like, it is very deliberate.
It is very deliberate. It's something I live by, something I teach my children, it's something I teach. When I'm teaching entrepreneurs, you have to understand that it doesn't happen by happenstance. There's a mentor I never met. Met him on the internet just after he died, actually.
You met him after he died?
Right.
Okay.
Right. So I've never spoken to him,
right.
but Jim Rohn is his name, right?
Okay.
So I met him just after he died. Learned about him just after he died because people were, lauding him during the time, saying, hey, he's changed my life. And so that was happening a lot on Facebook at the time. I was seeing a lot of him, and so I started researching him, doing a lot of his YouTube. I don't think anybody can know after, because that happened in 2005. There's hardly a quote, right, that nobody can give me a quote and I'm not able to say this is from Jim Rohn, because I've so studied him. I have become a disciple of this gentleman. One of the first things he taught me was nothing will change until you change. Nothing. So I was at this point in my life when I needed to change, when things needed to change, when I was as despondent and as feeling like I achieving my potential. I knew I was capable of much more than this. But it felt like the whole world was against me, and I was kind of looking outside of me and finding all the reasons why I wasn't moving along.
And this was around 2005?
Right. And he said, one of the things he said was, nothing changes until you change. So I was wondering, what do I need to change? And I realized I'm within my comfort zone. It was difficult. I didn't want to get out. I was shy. I was reserved. I was angry and resentful of all that had not happened. So all of that needed to change. All of what I wanted to do resided in me, right? One way or the other. I needed to let go of my fears. I needed to let go of my fear of failure, my fear of making mistakes, my resentment of others. All of this that was holding me back needed to change.
Wow.
I needed to step out of my comfort zone because I wanted to do things. I wanted to teach. But I was so afraid of teaching. Up to that time, I'd never taught a class. I had never, and now I can step on any stage with the intention of teaching and not feel afraid because I am comfortable. So my new comfort zone is I'm comfortable on a stage. I'm comfortable teaching entrepreneurs. I'm comfortable. So my comfort zone was this at the time. So now my comfort zone has expanded. So yes, my new comfort zone is I am comfortable. No, I'm challenging myself to get beyond that new comfort zone.
Right. Huh. Wow. That's pretty amazing. Like, so, I mean, you are good on stage. You know, I watch you all the time delivering messages, you know, in class and in the public. And you're definitely very passionate and I love listening. I love listening to you. You know, you remind me of I feel like you're a preacher as well. You know,
I have a former boss who used to say that you wear your emotions on your sleeve. Nothing gets hidden, right? I don't know if that's good or bad. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good. But it is true. I don't know how not to feel. Once I'm involved in something, I'm either going to give it everything or nothing, right? And sometimes, as I say, that's bad. Sometimes that's good. For entrepreneurship, one thing I know is that the people I teach tend to come away knowing for sure that I care about them. I care about their businesses. I care about what they do as entrepreneurs. So it has helped me in that regard. And I think it has helped them as well. So. Yeah,
I mean, you clearly love what you do, and that's part of the charm, I think. So I want to go back to your dad, Nebuchadnezzar. What's his story?
My father was a great character. It was interesting that the bosses at the place he worked, I remember I did a summer job as an intern. And everybody, it was amusing and amazing at the same time.
This is your dad's company?
It wasn't his company. He was a contractor there. He was contracted to haul consumer goods.
Right. Okay. Right. Yeah.
So he had about 3 trucks that worked with the organization. So he had to go there every day to get the trucks loaded to take to supermarkets and stuff. So everybody, they would say, you'd hear rustling and under their breath talking, Jesus Christ coming. It's like, Jesus Christ are coming.
Right.
That's a nickname they gave him.
Okay.
Jesus, because
interesting.
He had this presence as if he was in control. Everybody was kind of afraid of him. I don't know if that was a good thing.
Wow.
But he had this presence and he just spoke what was always on his mind.
Right.
He never ever was afraid to show up and to say what needed to be said and to say it in ways that got people moving.
Right.
So even though, he wasn't the typical father that you would say, his epitome of fatherhood, but he was my hero. Whether he recognized, my mother was the typical. She was a principal, primary school teacher, principal. So she was the what would you call this? The storybook kind of character.
Right.
Very, very prim and proper. My father was the complete opposite. And I think I'm a lot like him. You don't do what society expects you to do. You don't say what society expects you to say.
Right.
You break the rules sometimes, often, kind of thing. That was my father, and unwittingly he became my hero.
Right. So do you think you're like was he like that naturally, or because it sounds like in order for you to become like that, you had to go through.
But I was not like that naturally. But I'm saying because I journal a lot and I look back in my life, and I looked back across my life, and I saw what it is that influenced me. I was looking for patterns. I recognized that I was really drawn to him because of his willingness to stand up against societal opinions, his willingness just to be himself. He didn't really care much for societal norms and rules and that kind of thing. I didn't realize how drawn I was to him until I remember when he passed and I was giving his eulogy. I basically said the same thing, you know, the lessons my father taught me. That was the title of my eulogy, the lessons, what I learned, even though it was not an intentional lesson. My mother is a teacher, but I learned far more from my father about life than I did from my mother. He was independent. He was proud. He made me, that's why, for example, I never let my last name, West.
You didn't like it?
I didn't leave it when I got married.
Oh, okay.
I took it because I felt it was who I was and who I wanted to be.
Right.
More than anything else, I wanted to be West because that's my father. And he represented everything that I wanted to be. So I never knew how to leave that name behind.
Wow.
So, you know, it was my identity. Right.
So remind me of the biblical story of Nebuchadnezzar.
Nebuchadnezzar was a giant of a man. He was a king of Babylon, I think it was at the time. I'm not sure I'm giving the story right.
Okay.
But at the time, he got a dream that indicated to him that Babylon would have ruled the world at some point in time. And the dream was of a statue that had different kinds of metals and gold. Eventually, what he did was create the statue that he had dreamt about and made it a central point in Babylon, and everybody had to come and bow to it because it represented him. It was saying that I am this great person. Okay. Everybody had to come and bow to it. I'm sure it's not the best story to tell.
Yeah.
But it's for me, my father was like this figure in my own head. He was my hero.
Right. And everybody came to bow and draw, and that's why his nickname was Jesus Christ.
Absolutely.
Wow, I haven't heard that one. I haven't heard anybody have that nickname yet.
I'm telling you, that's my father.
Jesus, I come. Wow. That's Well, that's very interesting that you have that connection and that inspiration from him, and that you have obviously, perpetuated. Because you are very influential and people are drawn to you and I'm drawn to you.
And it's maybe obvious, as I said to most people, that I love entrepreneurship. I love small business development. I absolutely believe that it is the catalyst. It is the only true, genuine method through which the Caribbean can be developed. The world on a whole. Most economies that are strong across the world are built upon entrepreneurship. We're talking about China, we're talking about the USA, we're talking about India. These economies have been built on entrepreneurship. Businesses that are started in people's garages, started in small homes, and now, basically taking over the world. That's the model. So I absolutely believed in that, and so
yeah, that's amazing, and that's very interesting that you think that that's what the Caribbean lacks, especially is that entrepreneurism drive. Because I meet a lot of Europeans in Cayman who, they kind of make comments about the Caribbean and Cayman in particular because they live in here, that that the sort of entrepreneurial spirit isn't quite the same, and the companies aren't quite the same, and they're lacking something. And we're on Caribbean time and everything's slow, and I don't like to admit that, but I mean it kind of makes sense even historically that it would be that way. But I don't know that I ever pinpointed that as like one of the primary things that the Caribbean really needs to like focus on. But I think it makes perfect sense.
What I've found over time is that our people, Caribbean people, are, have a lot of ingenuity, naturally inclined towards entrepreneurship. Especially, granted, I wouldn't necessarily call it entrepreneurship. In some instances, it's really just subsistence living. It really is just doing something.
I know,
it's true.
I know that,
it is true.
Yeah.
Many of us were brought up that way, where as Caribbean people, where our parents were just really buying and selling to make a living, right? And so we've carried that culture and we've carried that ingenuity across, into the hustlership mentality. And what it does is that it keeps us tied to a way of life where we just buy and sell. And it's really focuses on income earning and not building a business.
Right.
And so what it takes to build a business, we don't pursue. We really, so far as we are able to earn an income, we are satisfied. And so maybe that's what they are seeing, this lack of a drive to push into real business men and women, business development, is really just a means of earning an income. And Cayman is a very laid back society. So if I can earn an income and earn enough to buy myself a boat and buy myself a house and I'm living life, I'm good. Why would I want to really learn how to run a business? All I'm looking for, the purpose of the business is to give me money to live, right? So as long as I'm getting that money, it doesn't mean I have to become a proper entrepreneur. And that's what probably keeps that from happening here, at least. In other countries, it's really just the same thing. Me just wanting primarily to earn an income. Earning an income and running a business are two completely different things. But most of us are okay so far as we are able to earn an income.
Yeah, and that's where you bridge the divide. You know, and that's where you really challenged me to step over from earning an income to running a business. Two different things.
Absolutely.
And it required a mind shift. It was like you're saying, Jim Rohn, your hero, had that. You know, that was the first thing. It was your mindset,
right?
And I remember with your classes, that's the first class you get.
You always, because that's what you have. The thinking. That's where it starts.
Yeah.
It has to start. One of the first books it taught us to look at is Think and Grow Rich.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Think in order to grow rich. That is what the book really should be called.
Right.
Think well in order to grow rich. That's what it's saying.
Right.
If you We are all our thoughts now. We really come down to the quality of our thoughts. Everything around us comes down to the quality. So if you learn to think properly, if you learn to think strategically, if you learn to think possibility, if you learn to think in terms of value, in terms of innovation, then you are on your way to becoming an entrepreneur. But we like to think same old, same old. We like to think, how do I get this money? Really comes down to money. Believe me, if you learn how to think, then the money is automatic. It comes with your learning to think. Well,
I mean, that's been such a hard transition. It is a hard bridge to go from earning income to running a business. And interesting that you mentioned that book. Is Napoleon Hill the author?
Napoleon Hill, yes. Napoleon Hill, what he did was to carry out a number of interviews of successful people.
Right.
And documented it in that book in terms, what it is that he told, what they told him.
Right.
And he came up with, well, he never revealed what the secret was. What's the secret?
Right. For me, what it taught me, and for me, this is what the secret is until I actually know what it is that he was talking about, was executing those plans of action. Right? Because I had planned before, but I thought that was kind of it. I actually didn't start execute. I had like the 5-year plan, the 10-year plan. So I saw the future. That's where we want to go.
And the thing is that I always say that the entrepreneurial mindset is a way of thinking that predisposes you to acting. So it's a way of thinking that predisposes you to action, because it's one thing to think. It's important to understand that you think about certain things in certain ways, but it's also extremely important that you put those plans into action. That is why I say, when people say, they are concerned about, people stealing their ideas, I laugh and I'm saying, you are not yet entrepreneurial. You are not the right person to bring that thing into action. Because if you were entrepreneurial, you would know that the value, while it's important to have ideas, the value lies in executing that idea, right? So it's people, if you come as an entrepreneur to a potential investor and say to him or her that I want I want an NDA, I want a non-disclosure agreement, they're not going to give you the time of day, because they listen to thousands of ideas. And if you have an idea, there's another man 20 other men or women who've had that idea. Yeah. The issue is who is now willing to take the step into executing that idea. So the idea is the first step. Thinking is the first step. Thinking pervades everything. But the entrepreneurial mindset is a way of thinking that predisposes you to acting.
Act. Wow. I love that. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's what you've taught me. That's what Napoleon Hill taught me. That was definitely the missing link.
It's very, as I said, it's been some time, but I think it's that sounds like it.
How cool. You remind me of him, because you said that you went looking for models and principles of entrepreneurism to see what worked before you, the Amazons, which is what Napoleon Hill did. Because when you read the book, which is cool about the book, is that he has stories about Rockefeller and all the oil magnates and the car magnates and you know, so and like real life stories because he like met them
Right.
and
That's
recounted what they went through and how they came to where they were. And so it's a good read. I love the book.
It is a good read, and you know me. I'm always recommending a book,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Because people will say that it's all theory, but I like to read what works, and I'm reading from persons who've done it, and I'm reading the paths that they have taken and how it works. So books like Good to Great, you know, because I'm into growing businesses, right? Because I have the passion. I'm seeing persons with potentially good ideas, good forms in terms of what the business looks like now, and I know that it can go to the next level. I need to find a way, a path for them to take. So I'm always looking, and every subject matter that I'm studying, I'm looking for something that exists. I don't know, Charlie Munger just
Right.
died recently, right?
Correct.
He is the epitome of mental models, right? He says that he can't think outside of mental models because
Right.
it's a shortcut. It is the way to think, the best way to think. You know, what model can I use to understand this and there know what to apply.
Right.
So that's where I got this whole idea of looking for models. Models of how to think, but models of how to do it. Because if somebody has done it already and done it well, why would you want to reinvent the wheel? Why would you not use this model to do it the same way? And I've been accused that I have for small businesses, I don't understand small businesses because I'm always talking about big companies. But what do I give you to aspire to? I fully understand them, but what I don't accept it's used all the time. I came here and that's the first thing I heard.
What?
Small businesses can't.
Yeah.
I absolutely do not accept that small businesses can't.
Exactly.
I believe they can.
Right.
I believe if they are allowed to, if the owners allow themselves to, they can. And so my mission is to grow. But I'll tell you where I want to take you. You have that responsibility. You have the opportunity to come or not to come. But I'm not going to, if, for example, when I say that trainings happen at 9 to 12, that's deliberate. Because what I'm trying to help you to understand is that you ought not to be working in your business. That ought to be for somebody else to do. And if it's for you alone, you're going to be working your business around the time that you're taking to learn what it takes to grow a business. So I'm not going to have classes after 5 when you've spent the entire day working in your business and you're tired. So if I'm to understand, according to people, I don't understand small businesses because I would understand that they can't come in the day. They have to sit. And I'm saying,
But you do understand that.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I absolutely understand that. But I'm saying you have to leave the way of how you normally operate and move into a place where these are the growth steps that you need to take.
Yeah.
You have to take this path.
So let's talk a little about that, because that's definitely one of the main things I've learned that I don't think a lot of people think about. I mean, there are successful entrepreneurs and maybe the unsuccessful ones don't quite understand it. And then there's also the people who want to start a business and are about to start a business that they don't see this either. And you just said it just now. It's not working in the business, it's working on the business. Like that was a real eye opener for me. And it's I would love to talk more about that because it requires you doing something that you're not really necessarily good at, and also something that you didn't actually think that you were gonna do when you started the business.
And you don't like doing it either.
Or you don't necessarily like doing it. So it's like you started this business because you liked doing this particular thing, right? At least it was in my case. And I know in a lot of people's cases. And the classic example of the baker, someone who loves to bake, so they're going to start a baking company because they love to bake. And that's the working in the business part of it. But your whole job is to extricate us from that mindset and say, no, actually, you're not going to be doing that anymore.
Or not so much.
You're going to be working on the business. So you're going to be doing a whole bunch of other things that you don't even know what they are yet. And you're going to have to execute those if your business is actually going to grow.
Absolutely. And most times most entrepreneurs, they like to say that I am the CEO. I say that's the chief everything officer, right? And it's a good place to start. It's an okay place to be when you're starting, but it can't be that you're going to stay there. So for example, you are the you are doing hairdressing and you are sometimes cleaning the floor and you're doing the books. And if you can do the books, most people can't do the books.
Yeah.
And they're doing everything else that really and truly prevents them. Once you are doing the same thing that your employee is doing, you're going to be paid the same thing that your employee gets paid, right? Not much more, right?
Income generating.
Right. What you need to be doing is learning, how to innovate, how to strategize, how, what is the biggest money maker, what products should we be taking, forming supplier relationships, which is the best supplier to use, who do I drop, what equipment, what resources should I have. Those are decisions and that you ought to be making day in, day out. And the thing is that most small business owners don't want to be doing this because it's, as one said to me, it's the boring stuff. It is not what I want to do. I wanted to be independent. I like doing hair. I like being a tailor. I like making clothes. That's why I didn't want to work for anybody else. That's why I became an entrepreneur. I don't call those entrepreneurs. I call those small business owners. There's a distinction, right?
Right.
Between the business owner and the entrepreneur.
Right.
So the business owner, the small business owner, just really wants to
do enough.
Right? But what I always say is that what you need to do is to make time. Start off by even an hour a day. Create the habit of the first hour of the day you spend some time working on the business. Looking at your supplier relationships, looking at what sold yesterday, or what has been having a trend of selling. What should I drop because it's not selling? Where do I break even? What products do I need to have more off on the shelf? Those are the kinds of questions they should be asking and making decisions around, and not so much about doing the hair. What you should be doing is hiring. Who do I hire to become, my next best hairdresser that's going to bring the people in? Because I know of your passion for what you do. If you're a hairdresser, you're a tailor, but that time could be taught teaching, teaching a smaller. So you're doing it with a smaller group of persons, in order that now you're going to have a staff over time to manage that kind of thing. But it's what they don't want to do. As I like to say, entrepreneurs wear three hats. They are entrepreneurs. You are a technical person. You are the entrepreneur. And what's the third one?
Entrepreneurial.
Come on.
She's putting me to the test. So entrepreneurs wear three hats.
Yes.
They're the entrepreneur. They're the technical.
And they're the managers.
And they're the managers,
right? So as I like to say, the entrepreneur is the one who keeps you soaring, the one with the ideas, the one who is the dreams, the visions. The technical person is the one who has the skills, right? So that's the hairdresser, right? And the person who is the manager is the one who makes the decisions, looks at the numbers, the one who says where we're doing well, where we're not doing well, what should we drop, how should we grow, who should we hire. That's the management. Now, all of these three persons are you. So whereas before you were the chief everything officer wearing 12, 10, 15 hats, you really should be wearing three hats. Ideally, if you are big enough, you are trying to find a way to delegate even the things so you're no longer a technician, a technical person in that. So you're doing just wearing two hats. You're an entrepreneur and you are the manager as well. And not just, so you remove the technical hat altogether, but most people don't want to stop doing what they are passionate about.
Right.
So we say, all right, wear that hat if you have to, if you want to, keep wearing it, because that's what gives you passion and joy, and we don't want to take that from you. But you have to allow for the fact that you need to do much more because if you keep doing what your employees are doing, you're going to be on the same level. So you earn a certain amount of money, but you pay it back, you buy resources. So what you have left is the same thing that you're paying your employees. Does it make sense? It doesn't.
You know what I thought of when you said the entrepreneur is three people? There's entrepreneur, the technical, and the manager. The Trinity.
Right. See? Absolutely.
So like God,
3 in 1.
God the Father is the manager. The Holy Spirit is the entrepreneur, and Jesus is the technician.
Right?
You sort of need that three personalities in one to have a 360 comprehensive grasp of the business.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm glad that you're here in Cayman, and I feel like you've been here forever.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
That's great. You've been very impactful in my life, so I feel like I've known you forever, but I know I just met you after COVID, basically.
And that's why I say entrepreneurship saved me, because I was in a corporate job that really wasn't impacting anybody's life. Well, not positively. I was working with a utility company. Nobody likes utility companies, right? So I was working in customer service and billing and doing those kinds of things, but going home and feeling very unhappy, unsatisfied, unfulfilled. And when I got into entrepreneurship, I was going out into business development. I was going out, I was teaching. And it brought to me the fact that teaching probably is my biggest talent. And I hadn't taught before then. I hadn't done it. So, but once I got there, you know when you're at home, right?
Right.
So I felt at home, and I
Right.
actually was getting joy from impacting people and changing lives, and people were telling me that I was really impacting them.
Right.
And that made a difference and made me, feel life again. As I said, it really rejuvenated me. And my other love, as a matter of fact, that helped is personal development. I learned, as I said, from Jim Rohn. Really, as I like to say, a business will only grow as far as its owner grows. So you become the lid on the top of the business.
Right.
So if you don't learn, if you don't build your capacity, if you don't build your competencies, then the business is going to suffer. And people don't like to hear that because they believe, hey, I know it all already, or kind of thing, or they don't want to have to go into a classroom. And learning is so much more than a classroom. I like to talk about the University of YouTube, right? There are so many ways to learn, but the important thing is that a business is contained or constrained by your own personal, as the owner, growth. If you don't grow, if you don't learn new things, innovation can't happen, right? There is nothing that is going to, in terms of you won't learn anything about competitive advantage. How do I identify and sustain competitive advantage? How do you do that when you don't even know? You haven't taken the time to learn what your competitors are doing.
Right.
You haven't taken the time to learn anything about strategizing, innovating, or anything that is going to be useful. What is value? What does value look like? And people will tell me that it's all theory. But I like to say, if you all knew that these very big companies, all of these big companies, even quite a number of them are university dropouts, right? The Facebook, all of these tech companies tend to be university dropouts.
Yeah.
The thing is that while they dropped out, they kept the relationships with their professors. So the professors are the ones behind most of these big companies. So you think you want to go out and do, because what I'm teaching is theory. But it is a theory that grounds the experimentation.
Right.
It is a theory that grounds the actual administration and doing of what it is that you're learning.
Right.
So you have to understand these principles. As I like to say, methods may change, but the principles remain the same. And it is the principles that you have to learn, that you have to learn in order to grow yourself and to grow your business. They're tied. So if you're not learning anything, if you're not taking the time to learn new things, if you're not taking the time to learn about your competitors, to learn anything else, the likelihood of your business growing is zilch.
Yeah. It's been one of the hardest things, and we talk about it in here actually, that growing the business has meant having to just think completely different than you used to think. And I'm so grateful for that flip, because it was interesting when that flip happens, and when it happened to me, and now where I sort of find myself now is I have so much more to learn, so much more. Whereas before I met you in this program, I was out of options. I had nothing else to learn. When I met you, I told you, this business is not going to work. I'm not a good person for your program.
Absolutely. I remember that first conversation you told me that you've tried this many times around, and if this doesn't work this time, it's going to be your last time doing it.
Yeah.
That was 4 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Almost 4 years ago.
Yeah. But it was true, and that's how I felt, but how ignorant and blind I was, because now that the switch has happened, it's challenged me as a person. I've had to become different. I've had to accept things that I didn't previously want to accept, and now it's become fun now because I love the challenge, and there's a roadmap, there's a model, and I'm excited to just be executing those every day. And I do understand those entrepreneurs that look at you and say, oh, you don't understand entrepreneurism, because I was that guy as well. People would often say things to me like similar to what you said, like, oh, well, you need an accountant to do your work, or you need to pay yourself every month. And I'm like, oh, you don't get it. You're not running a business. Like, you don't get it. You just don't get it. It's not that simple. And it, it wasn't that simple, but now I love the parts of the business, because I used to be the technician. That's how I started making films. I loved making films and the process and shooting and editing and writing and developing everything. And now, as I'm building this company, I've had to take a step back from that and think like a manager and think like an entrepreneur and explore areas that aren't even related to filmmaking a lot of the times, and which is not what I wanted to do. I was just filmmaking, but yet I've learned so much, and I've become I'm definitely a little passionate about entrepreneurism. That's why I wanted to have you on the podcast. I think it's really important, and I'm glad to have a love for it, and to be going through that learning process of it right now, and yeah, I'm excited. I don't know what more to say than that.
I'm happy that you're excited. It is good when I look back over my life, sometimes maybe when you get to my age, I don't know, you're at a point in time where you're looking for impact. You are looking to ensure that you are creating value. You're looking to ensure that you're creating change, positive change, and that's where you're leaving a legacy, more or less. And that's where I am in my life. So whether that be here or wherever it is that I go, my objective is always to say that I think that the greatest means of change in the region right now, the greatest possibility of change is going to come from our people, or entrepreneurism on a whole. And so it behoves us to improve the quality and practice. And that's my mission. My whole mission is to improve the quality and practice of entrepreneurship, because I believe it has the power. I think the biggest challenge I have is getting our entrepreneurs to buy into the need for business development. If I have a program right now, if we have a program and we say, hey, it's grant monies, I have hundreds of applications. Everybody wants money.
This is an existing program?
No, I'm saying if we had a program, if there's an offer for grant money, you have hundreds of applications immediately. If there's a program that people have an opportunity to sell things, there are hundreds of applications. If it is that we have a program that says, hey, let's do some business development over here, let's work with us, let us teach you how to grow your business.
Different story.
It's a different story. It's a challenge. I'm having to convince them, entrepreneurs or business owners, that they need this. There was some study some years ago carried out by the GEM report, Global Entrepreneurship Monitor. And it carries a study in several countries, and in the Caribbean is always the one that I'm focusing on. And what was said is that, the entrepreneurs in the Caribbean, business owners in the Caribbean, think they scored very high, I think second, I don't remember how many countries, in terms of who believe that they can run businesses. The people who believe you have the ability to run businesses, the Caribbean somewhere came second. Who was doing worse at running businesses? These businesses that were researched, that actually went in. We came second again, right? So even though the truth is that we believe that we have the competencies, the facts of the matter is that we're not doing, because what they use, I think it's called there's a spectrum that's called, I think, latent. I don't remember the actual term of that that they use to see. Basically, they're looking at how quickly businesses fail.
Right.
So we were having the highest rate of failure within 2 years across all these regions that were studied. So yes, we start a number of businesses because we believe we have the competencies, but we are failing at the highest rate. So it means that business development is something
the most important thing.
It's a real need. But people just believe that I can do this.
Why is that?
Maybe it's our independent nature. Maybe it has to do with the fact that we feel that we are, we are independent people and we can do this. But the truth of the matter is that there is very real need for help. There is need for hand-holding. There is need for guidance, because most people who run businesses are just doing sales. Whether you buy it and you sell it back, or you make it and you sell it back, it is really just production. Or, whether it be how you receive it, bring it in, inbound logistics, as you learn from the value chain. Inbound, outbound. So I buy it, whatever it is that I do to it, if I package it or whatever it is that I do, or I make it and I sell it, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And business is so much more than that. Mm-hmm. That's why we teach how to think about a business. Mm-hmm. How do I make my business an asset? Mm-hmm. So that it's not just about buying and selling. How do I, if when I'm no longer interested in this business, or I'm retiring, I can sell this business at a profit? How do I make it an asset? So it's not just you're selling equipment, you're selling your truck, or you're actually selling something. You have patents, you have a brand, you have you have IP, you have goodwill. And all of those have significant value that somebody can purchase and you can earn significantly from. How do I make my business into a franchise? Right? So those are questions that the average person doesn't ask. They just want the question is, how do I get enough money to give my wife and children to make it through this week? And that is as far as the questions. And I'm saying what whole life is. Life gives us in proportion to the quality of questions that we ask. So if I'm merely asking, how do I get money to give my children to go to school?
That's the answer you're
going to get. You have to ask larger questions. Right. You have to ask bigger things. You have to want bigger things. How do I create value? How do I create change? How do I innovate? How do I do things? How do I sustain competitive advantage?
How do I create a company that will live past me?
Exactly. How do I create generational wealth?
Because if you don't have an answer for that, you're not going to do it.
That's the point. That is the point. You have to ask the right questions.
That was definitely a huge thing I learned here too, when I understood the idea that your company is an asset. I had never actually thought about that. And then is your company an asset? Can you actually go and sell that? And when I learned that and I asked myself the question, I realized horrifically no. Like, who would even buy this? What is this? There's nothing here.
They'd buy your equipment.
Yeah.
But could you move out and somebody move in and start running a business at the same time? And that is not at all.
And and now there's the challenge to do that.
Absolutely.
And to create that so that you could step away and it could.
Absolutely.
It's not just going to happen. You actually have to implement things to make that happen.
Absolutely. You have to build out. You have to create the processes. You have to create organizational structure. You have to build a brand. What does the brand look like? How do I represent myself? How do I represent the company? What does goodwill look like to me? All of these questions. Build processes and systems in place to make it repeatable and scalable.
I just wonder what that is, because when you say that the Caribbean came in second for believing that they could run a business, and then they came in second for highest rate of failure. I'm like, what is that? That hits to the heart, because I know a lot of people like that. And I myself used to be like that. Before I started my business, I knew I could run this business. I didn't need anybody to tell me. I didn't need any confirmation. I knew I could do this. But yet I was completely wrong.
What you can do is make film, right?
Yeah.
And that is so a person going into a hairdressing business or whatever it is, a video business, they are sure, and they're usually excellent craftspeople, right? They know how to hone their craft.
Right.
They do well at that.
Right.
But that's not running a business.
No.
It is absolutely not. It is just one element, and that's the least important. What you need to do is to teach other people how to do it as well as you.
Right.
And so that you can replicate that and then build a business around that. But most of us think that's sufficient.
It's like getting another college degree, except a little bit more. And I don't think people realize that. Nobody goes into it thinking, oh, yeah, I have my bachelor's, unless you actually went through the process of getting your bachelor's. Oh, I have my master's, unless you went through the process of getting your master's. you can't run a business until you actually go through that same sort of process, that learning process, that unlearning process.
Absolutely, because the unlearning is as important as the learning.
Yeah, you're right about that.
Unlearning
that's
is as important as the learning, because you go into it with one mindset, with one way of doing things,
and that's not the right.
and that usually does not work.
So let me ask you something. Why don't we teach it in school? You think that's is that a thing?
The thing is that, even when I try to approach schools here, other countries, Jamaica, for example, people think that a business class, like, for example, principles of business is entrepreneurship. And once we teach principles of business, we're teaching entrepreneurship.
No.
Nope. No.
It's a whole degree.
It's completely different. The principles of business, accounting, they're completely different.
Yeah.
So, for example, when I assess students who come on a pitching competition or whatever, I recognize that these persons have been taught business, principles of business or whatever,
right.
And they have been taught a little bit of accounts, but they don't know the intricacies, the questions, the supply chain issues, the issues of scalability, those things how do you build the processes in terms of building out a business, the structure, the principles and the policies and those kind of things.
They're just missing
They're missing those things. Nobody teaches those things. Nobody teaches them about the business model, the business model on a whole. How do I make money? How do I come up with revenue streams that are, they are recurring?
Mm-hmm.
So, and what model am I using? Am I going to be using a subscription model? Am I going to be using advertising? Those things are not taught in schools.
And so when people pitch companies to you before, and you find that lacking.
Absolutely, especially students, even university students. You have to be taught these things from a point of view of an entrepreneur. What's an investor looking for? So, for example, you'll go and you'll get a grade sheet from a high school or university when they're having a competition. It's all academics. Did the students dress well? Did they speak well? Did they project themselves? That's not the things in real life that a potential investor is looking for. He's looking to see, are you going to make money? Am I going to get money? Am I going to make money when I get into this deal? Right? Those are the kinds of questions, but I don't think we've effectively bridged the gap between school and real life. And so some of the things that we try to do is, get into the schools and help them to understand, how do I handling money in real life, understand leadership issues, understanding how to run a business. What do you look for in terms of how do you validate before you scale? And we don't do that. No. That is why businesses get in trouble. You go and you borrow from the bank. So you've been existing for 2-3 years. You feel you know it now. And you go and borrow from the bank. But you really haven't validated anything before you start to scale. Validation is a critical. That's what we teach. Once you're going to grow a business, everything has to be validated. The product has to be validated. The market has to be validated. Before you start scaling. So before you start thinking of how do I grow this business, you have to be certain that you have the right product, you have the right market, you have the right partners, you have the right financing.
And you have to validate all of those things.
All of those things along the way before you start to scale. Because or else you're going to be in trouble.
It's so fascinating. Do you like Shark Tank?
I like Shark Tank. You'll be surprised compared to other people. I think I've watched less of Shark Tank than most other people, but I do like it. I do like what I learn. I'm looking for sometimes I don't even listen to the pitch so much as I listen to the responses from the sharks, because I'm wanting to find out what it is that they're looking for. And I've learned over time that most times after they invest, they take no interest. I've always known that they're not going to take individual interest in the business. But most of them don't even look back at all on any of these. They invest because they believe not so much in the product, but they believe in the people. So they're looking to invest because of that's why I say to you, you constrain as a business owner, constrain that business insofar as you grow. Investors are looking only to invest in people. They are looking not so much as a product. I've seen on Shark Tank where an investor will say, I want to buy 100% of that.
Mm-hmm.
And later on, you learn that they didn't think it's an excellent product. They thought it's an excellent product, but they didn't think it was a good entrepreneur. For one reason or another.
That's why.
They'll say, this person has had this idea sitting on for 4 years.
And they just don't see it yet. They don't know what they're missing.
What do you do? Why would you take 4 years to bring this into being? It means that you are the wrong person for the venture. It won't grow under you. So I like the idea. I'm going to buy the entire thing. Sell it to me because you're not an entrepreneur. Maybe you're an inventor. You're not an entrepreneur. So they're always going to be looking for the people to invest in.
I mean, that's your thesis. It comes down to the mindset, right?
Comes down to the mindset.
The company can only grow with the person. You're the limit.
Absolutely. If you don't grow, the business won't grow. And I there are certain things that I've seen enough of to know you can't contradict me on it. I'm absolutely certain. There are those are the things. If you don't change, nothing will change.
Well, I feel like that's one of the things is change. The person has to be willing to change.
Absolutely. You have to be willing to change. I've had persons, even since I've been here, one person didn't say to me directly, but somebody else told me, the person said, they don't think we understand, small businesses because we are, and yet that was a person who I could not get to do anything of what we asked them to do. So how would you know that the methods don't work when you haven't tried them? How would you know, right? So you have to be willing to step out of your comfort zone. You have to be willing to step out of the routine or habits that you have created. Or sometimes it's really a lack of habits that cause, because people don't learn how to create routines and habits which are critical for growth. You can't grow without routines and habits. So as a business owner, one of your routines and habits must be that I'm going to spend some time every day, every single day, consistently working on my business.
Not in it.
That doesn't happen.
No, but one of the awesome things about the change and the change that I made is that when you actually, because I remember actually, you came in here one day and I don't know how far we were in the program, 6 months, maybe even going on a year, and you lectured us. And that was the day that I flipped. You said, you guys are not doing the work and it shows. And I was like, I could not even pretend. I was like, you're right. I have not done the work. You've given us all of these things to do and I have not done them. And it cut me to my core. And then I was like, okay, you tried everything now. You have to actually do these things. And the good part about doing those things, and it's work, you got to hustle and you got to put in the time and the hours doing those things that you didn't want to do. But the beautiful thing I love now is that when you see the fruits of those actions and you're like, oh, actually it did work.
It worked.
This is something new that I didn't have before.
Absolutely.
And it's something that I didn't see before. And so it's encouraging. You're like, okay, let me do something else. And you work on another module. Boom, boom, boom. And then you apply, you execute, and then you see it. Results happen. It's like the results, they come trickling in.
Right.
And each time it trickles in, it's like a little alleviating on your soul because you're like, there's some light at the end of the tunnel. We're moving towards something.
Right. And that's why my biggest, as I said to my staff sometimes, even though I love entrepreneurship, business development, my biggest, not regret, the thing that hurts most is the fact of how many people don't do what you ask, what you suggest that they do. Because too many people really aren't entrepreneurs. What they are is just people trying to make an income. And so the fear of, so I have, for example, I'll have persons to come in for sessions, right? And they get a call to come earn a little money at a trade show, a little show right here. And they're always going to take that opportunity to go earn the income, a little bit of money right now, and leave the long-term value on the table because you had to go get, as we say, where I'm from, you had to go eat a food right in this moment. You had to go get the money. So you left what was on the table in terms of what we were supposed to be doing in that moment. And you chose to go earn. And what happens is that keeps you tied to the way you live. It keeps you doing the same thing over and over. Because if you, even though we work with several entrepreneurs, if you check most of them, they're still doing the same things. They're still, because you are afraid, you live in fear, you're not willing to take the risk that entrepreneurs need to take. To let go of your current circumstance, let go of it. Just step out and take those risks that entrepreneurs need to take, because you are tied to how you do what you do currently. You're tied to your circumstance, and it is that unwillingness to let go. I see people struggling. You're trying to grow a business, and you're saying to them, "Hey, let go," and they're still. It creates a sense of pride in them to be able to say, I'm too busy, I'm busy.
Right.
And I've watched busy kill entrepreneurship. Because it makes them so proud to be able to say, I can't come because I have so much work. And that so much work kills you, kills everything in you, kills your potential. That is when you're supposed to be letting go.
Right.
That's when you're supposed to be letting go. And I've watched it. Christmas is coming and people are too busy. They're busy. They're busy. That's fine. It's a high season. I understand that. But I'm saying, whenever you hear as an entrepreneur yourself saying you're too busy to work on your business, then know that's when you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Because busy shouldn't mean, and people will say, you used to work a 9 to 5 and now you're working 9 to whatever, or you're working 20 hours a day and that kind of thing. That's true. And that is to be expected. But it can't be something that you're doing perpetually. It can't be something that, it has become a way of life.
Yeah.
You have to learn to let it go and allow. It's going to be outsourcing. It's going to be friends and family helping you. But you have to find a way to let go of all of this working in and start finding ways to work on. These are not my ideas. These are ideas I've always thought about them, never been able to put words to them till I saw it in a book by Michael Gerber, The E-Myth, where he talks about working on the business. I'm saying it does my heart good when I'm able to look at something that I've always thought about and see somebody else putting it into words, right? So that's where I got words for the concept, but it's something I've always known in terms of there's something that we're doing wrong. People need to let go of this busy working in the business.
When you say those people that need to let go, you mean people that are running small businesses.
Right.
You're not even talking about just the world in general, but
right.
those out there who are
I'm talking
trying
about
to create
people,
a business.
Right. People who say they want to grow their business need to understand that growing a business is about letting go. I listened to a sermon yesterday that talked about the blessing of letting go. Yes.
Okay.
The blessing of letting go.
Right.
There are some times when holding on is keeping us bound, keeping us small, right? You have to learn when to let go. You let go. You create the systems that allow you to let go. Whether it be delegating, whether it be bringing somebody in to help. But we talk a lot about creating systems here, right?
We do.
But you need to create the systems that allow you to let go, the system that allow you to be repeatable, right? Because one of the things that we learned is the importance of consistency, repeatability, reliability. So your product looks the same, tastes the same, is as appealing every time you do it, right? So if you are a baker and you want to have a standard, you have recipes, but you also have ways at what temperature the oven is to be at, how long it's to be in, who does what. Those systems have to be created in order to be repeatable, right? So but you create the systems that allow you time to let go,
right?
Because letting go is your primary objective after a certain point in time.
If you seek to lose yourself, you will find yourself.
Absolutely, same principle.
You have to let go. But it's hard because as entrepreneurs, our excuse is, I have to pay rent on that day. And if I don't do that job that day, then I'm not going to pay rent. Whereas you're like, screw rent for now. Do what we're telling you to do. And then you'll actually find that you will be able to pay the rent plus more.
Absolutely.
But it's just so hard. It's like an irrational thought that we need to...
But then that is why it's so important. Creativity is critical to entrepreneurship. You have to find creative ways. There's this book, I'm always talking about books, that Daymond John wrote. I found it one of the most powerful entrepreneurial books. It's called The Power of Broke. And he teaches you how not to throw money at problems, so that you learn to be creative at solving problems without money, such that you can move along. right? So that it's not always
It's going to be my next book.
You need to read that book.
Yeah.
It's a powerful book. How do I solve immediate problems? And the thing is that we are always trying to throw money at solving our problems.
Right.
It's not always an issue of money. How do I become creative? I could go to my landlord and barter something, for example,
Right.
and say, "Hey, let's you give. I'll do this kind of service for you."
Right.
And so it's really about becoming creative, and it's not just about creativity in your business, but it's about creativity in so many ways that you bring to the table that you use in your business eventually.
Right.
But you have to find ways, problem solving as well as entrepreneurial mindset. You have to be a problem solver. You have to be a critical thinker. These are ways in which I solve these problems. It's not always about throwing money. And if you think that running a business is about all the time about throwing money at issues or getting money, you don't have what it takes. I like to say, you're not ready for this yet.
You're not ready. Oh, wow.
That's what I'm saying. You have to, you have to understand that it takes special skills to be an entrepreneur. Right. And you have to understand it well in order to be ready for it, right?
Right. Huh. I mean, there's so much there. There's so much to learn. There's so much to be passionate about. There's so much for everyone to learn. You know, I would really love for Cayman to just boom exponentially.
I have come to love being here. I've come to love the people and the interactions and the entrepreneurs, especially the ones who weren't born with gold spoons in their mouth, the ones who are just really trying to make it.
Yeah,
I've loved working with them so far, and you know, I think there's so much potential.
There is. It's just how you unlock that potential is just really hard because it's such a personal journey for everyone, you know. But you are proof that you can actually change people and impact people and get them to see the light, you know. So that's at least a very good thing, Althea, that you know you're not doing it in vain, and people do respond, and I have responded because of you. And so that's great. So that's good for me because then I know that others can respond, and I know how disheartening it is to see, you know, even, you know, people not taking advantage of, you know, your program and what it can do for them. And it's disheartening for me as well. I'm like, you know, what is it like? And you know what's funny is, again, you said just now too, it's like a source of pride to say I'm running this business and I'm so busy. And it's so true, because one aspect in my business that I want to change next year, thanks to you, and I'm currently setting up the system so that the system can run without me being there, is the accounting and financial side of it. And what's interesting about the accounting and financial side of it is that I'm not natural in accounting and finance. That's not where I fit naturally. But over the years, I taught myself how to do it. I taught myself accounting, I taught myself QuickBooks, and I taught myself how to do these things. And it became a source of pride. Oh, I do my QuickBooks. And I had a couple accountants in the past. I did bring them in and I kind of shrugged them off. And I'm like, no, you know, I can do this, you know. And it was like, why should I get somebody to do that when, you know, I can do it? And then it's just like, you know, thanks to you, I've kind of like realized, no, you have got to let that side of it go, because you're not even good at it in the first place. Even though you do it, you're not that good at it.
The thing is that you learn over time to understand value. So, for example, the time that you spend doing the accounting that you're not good at.
Yeah.
If you were to put a value to that time, you know, you would have lost money, you know.
Yeah.
You absolutely, because you're worth way more than the time you've spent
doing that accounting.
Yeah. The amount of money that you spend paying, that you'd have given to an accountant, is far less than the amount of time, the value of your time.
Right.
So you have to learn to put a value on your time, and you know whether you are wasting your time or not. Right. How much would you have paid yourself over those 2 hours? Way more than we'd have paid an accountant.
And it takes me way longer to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. My accounting takes all day. It's once a week.
So you probably could have earned several $1,000s in the time you take. So entrepreneurs have to understand the concept of value. And that is a very, very important concept, you know, that, you know, how much value do you place on what you do, and how much value do you place on yourself. Value is important.
Yeah.
It's extremely valuable.
So I hold this to me. because next year, so right now I'm creating a system that does the accounting and the finance. Boom, boom, boom. This is what you do. This is what you do every day, every week, every month, every quarter, every year. Boom, boom, boom.
Good.
Yes. And I'm going to find somebody out there in the universe and say, hey,
Absolutely.
this is what I want.
And pay them to do it.
Pay them to do it.
Right. Outsource, delegate. As you grow, 2 words, outsource, delegate. You learn what to delegate, learn what to outsource. Critical.
You learn what to delegate and you learn what to outsource. I remember reading this in one of your things. And then what are the things that you do, right? Where do you add most value?
Where do you add most value?
And, you know, what's funny about that is we have examples of that, like even like with, I don't know if it's a great example, maybe like Steve Jobs and these other people that start the business, they eventually get pushed out from the areas that they're not necessarily good at.
And sometimes they extricate themselves and remove themselves deliberately because they know, as Steve Jobs himself says, we don't hire good people. What was it? What's the quote again? You don't hire good people to tell them what to do.
All right.
You hire good people for them to tell you what to do.
Right.
Because they're good at it, better at it than you are. Right? So that's it. You have to be humble enough to be able to say, this person is better than that, than this, and I am. So that's how it is.
Humility is a big part of it.
Yeah, it's a big thing.
Because you just have to admit so much that you don't know.
Right, that's so true. That's so true. And not many of us are willing to do that.
No, we're not. It's hard to lower yourself, I guess, you know. But yeah, so this has been a great conversation.
It has.
and I knew that it would be. Thank you so much for being a part of the In Cayman
Thanks for
podcast.
having me. I've enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks for being in Cayman. I know, you've spent your life elsewhere in the world. I'm sure I have a feeling that you will probably keep moving on as well. I don't know.
I'm still not sure. I'm looking. I'm determining where from now. Where from here.
But you've done great things here, and I would love for, I don't know if people know about sort of what you do. We'll leave all the information in the comments, or not the comment section, in the description of the video, so that people can find out more about what you do and your services that are available to everyone here in Cayman. And I highly recommend, as I do to everybody, all small business and entrepreneurs that I run into, I tell them about yourself and your program here at CICBD. And I just want to say again, thank you very much.
Thanks again for having me. I truly enjoyed being able to express myself and tell some stories I've never told or haven't told in many years. So yes.
And definitely want to have.
I got too comfortable.
Good. Yeah, it was great. I definitely enjoyed the conversation and would love to have another one with you again on the podcast one day.
Okay, we'll see how that goes.
Thanks, Althea.
Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.